I froze in the doorway of my master bedroom, keys still dangling from my fingertips like some pathetic lifeline. My dresser and nightstand sat abandoned in the hallway behind me like unwanted yard sale rejects. Two strangers with paint rollers were slathering my carefully chosen soft gray walls with a nauseating shade of bright Pepto-Bismol pink. The exact color that screamed, I watched too many Barbie movies and now I run the HOA. And there, in the center of the chaos like a queen on her throne, stood my brother's wife, Stephanie, beaming like she'd just single-handedly solved world hunger by enforcing community harmony. "Oh, good. You're home," she chirped, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she reserved for HOA board meetings. "We're just renovating before Dylan and I move in. Don't you love the color? It's the new standard I pushed through last month, community blush pink. So uplifting." The room went dead silent. My parents' smiles evaporated as they finally registered the horror on my face. Dylan shifted from foot to foot like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and I felt something snap inside me, something that had been bending under months of HOA fines, passive-aggressive violation letters, and family side-eye. But this clown show didn't erupt out of thin air. In Willow Creek Estates, the perfect suburban neighborhood where every blade of grass had to be exactly 3 inches and flags could only fly on approved holidays, family didn't typically break into your house and redecorate unless there was a long, ugly history. And ours have been simmering for over a year, ever since I made what they called the stupidest decision of my adult life. I bought a house that was falling apart. At 33, I was done with cramped apartments and beige walls I couldn't touch without a landlord having a meltdown. I wanted something that was truly mine. The listing photos looked like they'd been snapped during a natural disaster. The yard was basically a wildlife refuge for dandelions. Paint peeled like the house was molting, and every fixture screamed money pit. But the second I stepped inside, I felt it, pure possibility. As an interior designer, I knew I could turn this wreck into a masterpiece. The mortgage was actually affordable precisely because of the condition, like the universe finally throwing me a bone. My family reacted like I'd announced I was joining a cult. At Sunday dinner, my parents' perfectly HOA-compliant beige McMansion 2 streets over, Mom clutched her pearls. "Alexandra, honey, why not a nice condo with everything already done? The HOA here is ruthless. They fine Mrs. Jenkins last week for having the wrong shade of mulch. That house is going to eat every cent you have." Dad just shook his head like I'd lost my mind. "It's a money pit, kid. And Stephanie's been saying the board is cracking down on non-compliant exteriors." My younger brother Dylan piled on with his usual wisdom. "Seriously, Alex, just get a townhouse. This sounds like a nightmare, especially with the new president pushing pink everything." And right beside him sat Stephanie, rolling her eyes so hard I thought they'd pop out, scrolling Instagram like her 15 followers cared about her influencer life of staging lattes and complaining about tacky neighbors. She'd never held a real job, but suddenly she was an expert on everything. Their opinions slid right off me. I saw beyond the peeling paint and the weed jungle. I saw my home. I had contractor connections who wouldn't gouge me, and I understood the work. The next 6 months were brutal in ways I never imagined. I painted until my arms felt like they'd fall off. I learned plumbing terms I never wanted in my vocabulary. Home Depot staff knew me by name and asked about my project, baby. There were dark moments, like when the electrical inspector demanded a full rewire or when 3 straight days of rain turned my living room into a bucket orchestra thanks to a hidden roof leak. But slowly, beautifully, it came together. Fresh gray walls brightened everything. Hardwood floors emerged like buried treasure. The yard became an actual garden instead of a jungle. Every finished project poured gasoline on my determination. This was mine, every color choice, every fixture, every plant. That's when I decided to throw a housewarming party. I announced it at the next Sunday dinner, trying to sound casual. "Next Saturday, 6 o'clock. I'd love for you all to see the finished house." Stephanie's laugh cut like a knife. "A pigsty party? Pass." She giggled like she'd dropped the punchline of the century. Heat flooded my face, but I kept my voice steady. Actually, it's completely renovated. But if you don't want to come, don't. Her face flushed beet red, and she pouted the rest of the night like a toddler denied her favorite toy. My parents promised they'd attend, but their smiles looked glued on. The party started at 6. Co-workers, friends, neighbors poured in, oohing and awing over every detail. "This gray is chef's kiss," one friend said. "You really turned this place around." The validation after months of family and HOA skepticism felt like a warm hug. My family was nowhere in sight. An hour passed, then 90 minutes. Just as I was accepting they'd ghosted me, cars pulled up. My parents, Dylan, and Stephanie walked in wearing expressions that screamed, "We expect squalor." The second they stepped inside, my parents' jaws dropped. "Oh my goodness, Alexandra," Mom gasped, eyes wide. "This is stunning. You have incredible taste." Sweet vindication. But Stephanie? She went full inspector mode, running fingers along surfaces, squinting at corners, hunting for violations like a shark smelling blood. She disappeared upstairs for 10 minutes, then announced loud enough for guests to hear, "The master bedroom color is completely non-compliant." Gray? Absolutely not. We'll have to repaint that. Pink is the new standard I just got approved. I smiled sweetly. "Well, when it's your house, you can paint it whatever color you want. Even that bubblegum nightmare you seem obsessed with." Everyone knew Stephanie's entire personality was pink. Pink blazers at board meetings, pink signs at every HOA event, pink everything. My shot landed. Her face twisted and she snapped, "Come on, Dylan. We're leaving." Dylan shot me an apologetic glance, but trailed after her like a whipped puppy. My parents left too, heads down, embarrassed. The party instantly got better once they were gone. About a week later, Mom called, voice full of fake remorse. "I feel terrible about how Saturday ended. Can I come over, just us? I want to see everything properly." Her visit was lovely. She asked thoughtful questions, offered real compliments, admitted she'd been wrong to discourage me. "Your father and I should have supported you," she said over coffee in my new kitchen. As she left, I handed her a spare key. "In case I travel, you can water the plants or check on things." She hugged me tight. It felt like maybe we were healing. Over the next months, she visited a few times, bringing groceries, cooking together. It was nice. Dylan and Stephanie? Radio silence. Occasional vague texts from Dylan, nothing from her. For peaceful months rolled by. Work boomed. I started dating someone new. Life was finally balanced. Then Mom called one Thursday evening, that careful, gentle tone instantly setting off alarms. "Alexandra, honey, come for dinner Saturday? It's been too long since the whole family was together." Something in her voice made my stomach knot, but I agreed. Enough time had passed. Surely everyone could behave. Saturday, I drove over. Dylan and Stephanie were already there, of course. Dinner started polite enough. Roast beef, safe small talk. Then Mom set down her fork and gave me that plastic smile. "We wanted to talk to you about something. Dylan and Stephanie's lease is ending, and with the economy and Dylan's salary cut, my stomach plummeted. I knew exactly where this was going. We were thinking maybe they could stay with you temporarily, just until they get on their feet." The silence stretched. Dylan gave me that pathetic, hopeful grin. Stephanie stared at her phone. I took a breath. I don't want anyone else living in my house. Mom's face crumbled. "This isn't just anyone, this is family." "Understand," I said calmly. "But my answer is still no." Stephanie exploded. "I always knew you were selfish," she spat. "You have this big house and won't help family? Typical." I looked her dead in the eye. "Funny, you call my house a pigsty at the party. Now you want to live there for free." She shrugged. "If it's free, I guess I can tolerate it." The audacity was nuclear. Dylan launched into his sob story about layoffs. I suggested maybe both adults could work instead of Stephanie playing influencer. She burst into theatrical tears and stormed upstairs. Dylan snarled at me and chased after her. My parents stared at me like I'd murdered someone. I finished dinner and left. After that, total silence. No calls, no texts. It was bliss. A month of beautiful, drama-free peace passed. I could leave for work knowing my house would stay exactly as I left it. No more HOA violation letters about my non-compliant gray, because Stephanie, as the newly elected president, had been sending them weekly since the housewarming. She'd campaigned on restoring standards, using my house as her poster child for tacky renovations at every board meeting. "We can't let one homeowner ruin the aesthetic with that depressing gray," she'd say, pushing her pink amendment like it was the cure for cancer. Neighbors whispered about the ridiculous fines she handed out. Mrs. Thompson got cited for Christmas lights left up 3 days past January. Old Mr. Ellis for having a bird feeder that was too visible. It was a cult, and Stephanie was high priestess. Then one Tuesday, everything shattered. I had a client meeting at 2 that got rescheduled because of a family emergency on their end. I decided to head home early and work from my beautiful kitchen. I pulled in a driveway around noon and spotted 2 familiar cars, Mom's sedan and Dylan's beat-up hatchback. My first thought was worry, maybe an emergency. But logic hit, they would have called. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. My blood turned to ice. My furniture was scattered everywhere, dresser, nightstand, even lamps piled in the hallway like trash. Voices echoed from upstairs, loud and bossy. Heart hammering, I climbed the stairs. The voices grew clearer, coming from my master bedroom. I stepped into the doorway and froze. Mom and Dad stood against one wall, smiling nervously. Dylan was moving boxes. And Stephanie, in her official pink HOA blazer with the little gold president pin gleaming like a badge of tyranny, stood directing 2 men I'd never seen. HOA-approved contractors, apparently, with paint rollers and brushes. They were covering my perfect soft gray walls with that vomit-inducing bright pink. One wall was already halfway done, the contrast so grotesque it hurt to look at. What the hell is going on here? The words ripped out of me. Everyone jumped. The painters froze mid-stroke, paint dripping onto my hardwood. Mom looked guilty. Dylan looked like a deer in headlights. Stephanie just kept smiling that fake sweet smile. "Oh, good, you're home," she chirped exactly like before. "We're just bringing the master bedroom into compliance before Dylan and I move in. Don't you love the color? It's the new HOA standard, community blush pink. I got it passed unanimously last week. So much more welcoming than that depressing gray you chose." Rage exploded through me like a volcano. "Stop painting right now," I ordered the workers. They set down their brushes, confused. I turned on Mom. "How did you get in here?" She had the nerve to smile reassuringly. "I used the spare key you gave me, honey. We're family, and as board members we have emergency access rights. We knew you'd want Dylan and Stephanie comfortable when they move in." "Move in?" My voice sounded alien even to me. "I told you no." Clearly. Repeatedly. Dad stepped in, all confident. "We knew you'd come around eventually. You always do the right thing." "The right thing?" I laughed bitterly. "The right thing is letting you break into my house and destroy my bedroom because your precious HOA president decided pink is now mandatory." Stephanie waved a hand like I was being dramatic. "It's not breaking in, it's enforcement. Your gray violates the new covenant I wrote. And since Dylan lost his job and we're struggling, the board agreed this is the compassionate solution. Temporary housing while we correct the property." She actually air quoted it, like this was some official HOA resolution instead of straight-up theft. I took a deep breath, voice dangerously quiet. "Get out. All of you. Right now. Or I'm calling the police." They started the usual lecture. Family loyalty, selfishness, how I didn't understand Dylan's situation. Stephanie called me entitled for hoarding a perfectly good bedroom. The workers, sensing the explosion, packed up fast and vanished downstairs. When they were gone, I repeated, "Get out now, or I will physically remove you." Something in my eyes must have convinced them I wasn't bluffing. One by one, they filed out, down the stairs, out the front door. I stood alone in my half-ruined bedroom, staring at the pink horror on one wall and my beautiful gray on the other. I was shaking, but I knew I had to act fast. These people had proven they'd stop at nothing. First, I called Tony, my trusted contractor who lived 5 minutes away. Tony, emergency. I need every lock changed right now. While I waited, I drove to the hardware store, bought paint exactly matching my original gray, and a gallon of primer. I was repainting tonight, even if it took till dawn. Tony arrived in 20 minutes and swapped every lock, front, back, garage, even the side gate. After he left, I spent the entire evening and most of the night rolling primer over that hideous pink, then the gray again. Fueled by pure fury and determination, I finished around 2 a.m., paint splattered and exhausted, but my bedroom looked exactly as it should, like they'd never been there. The next morning, I called a security company. I want cameras covering the entire perimeter, full alarm system, motion sensors, door and window, alerts, everything. Connected to my phone app. They installed it that same day. Cameras on every corner, sensors everywhere. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. My house was mine again. Secure. That evidence came in handy faster than I expected. Just 2 days later, at my desk at work, my phone exploded with alerts. Motion detected. Front door attempted entry. Alarm triggered. Heart racing, I pulled up the live feed. There was Dylan at my front door, fumbling with what had to be the old spare key Mom gave him. He jiggled it uselessly, frustration growing. Then he looked around, went to his car, and came back with something that made my blood freeze, a crowbar. My own brother was trying to break into my house with a crowbar. He wedged it into the door frame and started prying. The alarm blared. Lights flashed. Dylan froze, dropped the crowbar like it burned him, and sprinted to his car, peeling away like a criminal, which he was. I saved the crystal-clear footage, his face visible, crowbar in hand, and drove straight to the police station. I want to file a report for attempted breaking and entering. They took it seriously once I showed the video. Dylan's face, the key attempt, the crowbar, undeniable. I filed everything. They said they'd follow up immediately. Saturday evening, my phone rang. Mom, hysterical. Alexandra, what have you done? The police came and arrested Dylan. They said you filed a report claiming he tried to break in. He tried to break in, I said calmly. I have video proof. You need to drop those charges right now, she sobbed. This is your brother. Maybe my brother shouldn't have tried to break into my house with a crowbar, after you all already broke in once to paint it pink. She cried harder, saying I was destroying the family. I finally said, I'll drop the charges, but only if you all promise to leave me completely alone. No more visits, no more attempt to move in, no more HO inspections. Nothing. And Stephanie resigns from the board, or at least stops targeting my house. She agreed instantly, desperate. Yes, anything, just drop them. My phone blew up after that. Dad, Dylan, Stephanie, all begging, promising they'd never bother me again. Please, Alexandra. We swear on our lives. Just fix this. I'll let them sweat overnight. Next morning, I went back to the station and withdrew the complaint. Dylan was released with a warning, no record yet. But it was enough to scare them straight. After that, complete silence. No calls, no texts, no surprise inspections. It was like I'd been erased from the family and the HOA radar. 6 months of pure peace followed. I left for work knowing my house was safe. I traveled without fear. The cameras stayed quiet. Life was finally mine again. I was starting to forget the whole nightmare when I ran into my cousin Rebecca at the grocery store. We'd always gotten along, but I hadn't seen her since before the pink painting incident. Alexandra, how are you? She exclaimed, hugging me. I've been wondering. We chatted about work and life before she casually dropped the bomb. So I heard Dylan and Stephanie are living with your parents now. Mom mentioned Stephanie's pregnant. That must be exciting for the family. Pregnant. That explained the desperation. Yeah, Rebecca continued. Your mom said they're really struggling financially. Dylan's job situation never improved, and now with a baby coming, I feel bad for them. But at least your parents are helping out. I nodded non-committally, not about to spill the whole saga in the cereal aisle. Driving home, I turned it over in my mind. Dylan and Stephanie shacked up with Mom and Dad. Stephanie pregnant. Still broke. My parents supporting them. Did I feel guilty? A tiny twinge, maybe. But mostly I felt relieved it wasn't my problem. I'd made the right choice buying that fixer-upper despite the HOA warnings and family doubt. I made the right choice renovating it exactly how I wanted, gray walls and all, even when Stephanie tried to find me into submission. I'd made the right choice protecting my boundaries when they tried to force their way in under the cover of HOA compliance, and that ridiculous pink mandate she'd rammed through just to spite me. And I definitely made the right choice installing that security system and filing the police report when Dylan crossed the line with his crowbar. My house was still beautiful. I still loved coming home to it every day. I still felt that deep pride looking around at everything I'd built with my own hands and my own money. I didn't have to share it with anyone I didn't choose. Some people might call that selfish. I called it self-preservation. I worked hard for what I had, and I had every right to defend it. My family, and the HOA cult they tried to drag me into, made their choices. I made mine. I wasn't responsible for fixing their financial messes or letting them take advantage just because we shared DNA or because Stephanie wore a stupid president pin. Sometimes you have to choose yourself, even when it's hard, even when they call you selfish, even when it means losing relationships you thought would last forever. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who has to live with the consequences. And I was living pretty damn well. Looking back, the whole ordeal was almost comical in its absurdity. The way Stephanie turned a simple color choice into a full-blown power trip. The way she convinced the entire board that pink was suddenly essential for neighborhood morale, just so she could justify invading my space. The HOA meetings I'd heard about later from neighbors were legendary. Her standing at the podium in that pink blazer, waving her amendment papers like a dictator, while everyone else just nodded because they were terrified of the next fine. "We must maintain aesthetic integrity," she'd proclaim, as if my soft gray was somehow threatening property values. Meanwhile, her own house, painted the exact same pink she forced on everyone else, looked like a giant Pepto-Bismol bottle. Dark humor at its finest. The woman who couldn't keep her own finances straight was deciding what color my bedroom had to be. The social sabotage was the cherry on top. After the housewarming, she'd whisper at board meetings about certain homeowners who think they're above the rules, making sure everyone knew it was me. Neighbors started avoiding me in the street, like I was contagious. One even apologized later. I didn't want to get fined for associating with a violator. It was suburban McCarthyism, HOA style. And my family enabled every second of it. Mom handing over that spare key like it was nothing, Dad nodding along because Stephanie knows best, Dylan too spineless to tell his wife to back off. But the moment I changed those locks and installed the cameras, the power flipped. Suddenly the mighty HOA president couldn't just waltz in anymore. The crowbar attempt? Pure desperation and pure karma. Watching Dylan drop that tool and run like a scared little boy on my phone screen was the most satisfying 30 seconds of my life. The police visit to their house? Even better. Mom's hysterical call begging me to drop the charges felt like the universe finally balancing the scales. I kept my word. I dropped everything. And they kept theirs, radio silence ever since. No more violation letters. Stephanie quietly resigned 2 weeks later, claiming personal reasons, but we all knew the truth. No more surprise visits. No more pink-pushing amendments. The neighborhood even voted in a new board president who actually cared about reasonable rules. Last I heard, Mrs. Jenkins got her mulch fine overturned. Small victories. Now I sit in my perfectly gray master bedroom, sipping coffee, watching the security apps stay blissfully quiet. The garden is blooming. The hardwood gleams. And I don't have to worry about anyone trying to correct my life ever again. Protecting my boundaries wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Sometimes the strongest walls aren't made of brick or HOA covenants. They're the ones you build yourself when people try to walk all over you. And mine are standing tall. Thanks for listening to this wild HOA Karen story. If it made you laugh, rage, and cheer at the same time. Share it with someone who needs to hear that standing your ground against entitled neighbors and power-tripping family is always worth it. Drop a comment if you've ever dealt with your own HOA nightmare. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding the courage to defend what's yours when the Karens of the world come knocking. Because at the end of the day, your home should be your sanctuary, not someone else's pink-painted power fantasy. Wait, hold on. I think I jumped ahead in the last file. Let me back up and give you the full picture of how we got from that dinner disaster to the police station, because the escalation was pure gold. After I refused to let Dylan and Stephanie move in, the silence wasn't just awkward, it was strategic. Stephanie started weaponizing the HOA harder than ever. Violation notices showed up in my mailbox weekly. Non-compliant interior color visible from street, even though my curtains were closed. Unauthorized plant species in garden. My roses apparently offended her aesthetic. Failure to maintain community standards. Each one came with a fine and a snide note from President Stephanie herself. She even called an emergency board meeting to discuss the gray house problem, trying to rally neighbors against me. The satire wrote itself. Grown adults debating whether my bedroom walls threatened property values like it was a national security issue. I paid the fines quietly at first, documenting everything because I knew I was building a case. I attended one meeting just to watch the circus. Stephanie stood at the podium in her signature pink blazer, voice sugary. We simply cannot allow one homeowner to undermine the harmony we've worked so hard to create. Gray is depressing. Pink promotes positivity. The room murmured agreement out of fear. I stood up calmly. Funny how the news standard matches your personal obsession exactly. Is this HOA or your Instagram feed? The room went quiet. She sputtered something about proper procedure and adjourned early. That night the fines doubled. Classic Karen move. But the real turning point came that Tuesday. I came home early. Finding them in my bedroom mid-pink slaughter wasn't just invasion. It was the perfect encapsulation of their entitlement. Stephanie genuinely believed that because she wore the HOA pin and mom had a key, she owned my house. It's for the greater good, she'd said during the confrontation, like repainting my bedroom against my will was some noble public service. Dylan just stood there mumbling about family helping family, while moving my furniture like a moving man who'd been paid in guilt. My parents? They actually tried to spin it as, we were doing you a favor by getting ahead of the next fine. The dark humor hit peak levels when Stephanie added, and once it's pink, we can list it as compliant and maybe even raise your property value so you can afford to help us more. Help them? The people who mocked my hard work for a year? Kicking them out felt incredible. Watching them file down the stairs like defeated soldiers, Stephanie still muttering about, "You'll regret this," under her breath, was pure satisfaction. Changing the locks with Tony was the first real power move. Installing the cameras? That was the masterstroke. The app on my phone became my new best friend. Live feeds, motion alerts, everything. I even added a sign at the front door. Smile, you're on camera. No HOA access without permission. Neighbors noticed. Whispers started that maybe President Stephanie had gone too far. Then came the crowbar incident. Catching Dylan on camera trying to pry open my door in broad daylight was better than any movie. The way he dropped the tool and ran when the alarm screamed? Priceless. Filing that police report felt like closing the circle. Showing the officer the footage, Dylan's face clear as day, crowbar gleaming, was the moment justice started turning. When Mom called hysterical, begging me to drop it, I finally had the leverage I'd been waiting for. No more contact. No more HOA harassment. Stephanie steps down, or at least stops targeting me. Promise, or the charges stay. Her desperate, yes, anything was music to my ears. The begging texts that flooded in afterward were gold. Dylan, I messed up, sis. I'll never do it again. Just help me. Stephanie, this is destroying our family. You're being so dramatic over paint. Dad, we raised you better than this. I'll let them stew. Dropping the charges the next morning was strategic mercy. They got the message loud and clear. Stephanie resigned quietly 2 weeks later, blamed personal health, but everyone knew the real reason. The new board actually repealed her pink amendment in the next meeting. Neighbors started waving at me again. The HOA fine stopped. Peace settled over Willow Creek Estates like it should have from the beginning. 6 months later, I was thriving. The security system never buzzed except for the occasional delivery guy. My gray bedroom remained gloriously gray. The garden flourished. Work was booming. And the best part? I ran into an old neighbor at the store who whispered, "Thank you for standing up to her." We were all terrified of those fines. Turns out I wasn't the only one sick of the pink dictatorship. Small acts of defiance spread. People started pushing back on other ridiculous rules. One even painted their shutters a soft blue and nothing happened. The cult was broken. But the real victory came when I learned through the grapevine that Dylan and Stephanie had moved in with my parents permanently. Stephanie's pregnancy was high risk, Dylan's still unemployed, and my parents were footing all the bills. No more temporary stay at my place. No more attempts to take over what I'd built. I felt zero guilt. I'd offer them nothing because they'd offer me nothing but criticism and entitlement. I chose me, and I was living damn well because of it. Sometimes the strongest defense isn't a crowbar or an HOA pin. It's a changed lock, a security camera, and the courage to say no. And if that makes me the villain in their story, fine. I'll be the villain with the beautiful gray bedroom and the peaceful life they tried and failed to steal. Looking back now, the whole saga feels like a cautionary tale wrapped in dark comedy. The HOA wasn't just rules. It was a weapon Stephanie wielded to mask her own failures. Her influencer life was a joke, her marriage to Dylan a financial black hole, and instead of fixing her own mess, she tried to colonize mine under the banner of community standards. The pink paint wasn't about harmony, it was about control. Forcing everyone to live in her favorite color was the ultimate Karen power move, turning an entire neighborhood into her personal mood board. And my family enabled it, because it was easier than telling her no. Mom with her spare key, Dad with his she knows best attitude, Dylan with his crowbar desperation. It was all the same entitlement wearing different masks. But I broke the cycle. Changing those locks wasn't just hardware. It was drawing a line in the sand. Installing the cameras wasn't paranoia. It was proof. Filing the police report wasn't vindictive. It was justice. And dropping the charges in exchange for permanent peace? That was strategy. They got the scare of their lives without a permanent record, and I got my life back without further drama. Win-win, except for their egos. The neighborhood changed too. After Stephanie stepped down, the new president actually listened to residents. Fines became reasonable. The Pink Amendment was scrapped within a month, replaced with homeowner choice within reason. People started renovating again without fear. One neighbor even told me, "Your stand gave the rest of us courage." Turns out I wasn't fighting alone. I was the spark. The satire of it all still makes me laugh. A grown woman in a pink blazer trying to dictate bedroom colors like it was her divine right, only to get exposed by her own brother-in-law's clumsy crowbar attempt caught on 4K camera. Peak comedy. Now, 6 months into the piece, my house is more than a home. It's a statement. Every time I walk into that gray master bedroom, I remember the day I caught the mid-paint and said no. Every time the security app stays quiet, I remember the power of boundaries. I still get the occasional Sunday dinner invite from Mom. Carefully worded, no mention of Dylan or Stephanie, but I politely decline. Some relationships are better left in the past. They made their choices, I made mine. And mine came with hardwood floors, thriving garden, and zero pink nightmares. If there's one lesson from this entire HOA Karen saga, it's this: never let anyone, family, neighbors, or power-tripping presidents, decide what your home should look like or who gets to live there. Your house is your sanctuary. Defend it fiercely. Change the locks if you have to. Install the cameras. Call the police if they cross the line with a crowbar. And when they beg you to drop the charges, make them promise peace. Because protecting what you've built isn't selfish. It's survival. Sometimes the strongest walls we build aren't made of brick, mortar, or HOA covenants. They're the invisible ones we raise when entitled people try to walk all over us. Mine are standing tall, painted soft gray, and looking better than ever. Thanks for coming along on this roller coaster of an HOA drama story. If it made you angry, made you laugh, and left you cheering for the underdog who finally won, hit that like button and share it with anyone who's ever dealt with a Karen, whether she's wearing an HOA badge or just family. Drop your own HOA horror stories in the comments. I read every single one, and they never fail to amaze me. Subscribe for more real-life tales of standing your ground when the world tries to paint over your dreams in someone else's favorite color. Because at the end of the day, your home should reflect you, not the whims of the neighborhood dictator with a pink obsession and a god complex. Stay strong out there. Your gray walls, or whatever color you choose, are waiting.